Just 12 months ago, Hyundai shocked the world by bringing out the IONIQ 5, the brand's first bespoke EV. And what they brought us was this big, bold, brash, stylish electric vehicle that was not only brilliant to drive, but packed full of tech. In fact, it won several Car of the Year awards. Now, just 12 months later, it looks to me like Hyundai are doing it again, because they've got another EV coming out later this year. Hey everyone, I'm Dave from Auto Bears, and this is the Hyundai IONIQ 6. Now, the IONIQ 6 is based on the Prophecy concept car we saw a couple of years ago. However, not much has really changed going into this production version. Well, actually, I should point out this is a pre-production car, so it's about 98% of what we're going to get in terms of the final product. But it just looks incredibly striking. It's very curvaceous. It is based on Streamliner cars from the 1920s and 30s. But here's the other thing. This looks nothing like an IONIQ 5, apart from the pixel lights, which the IONIQ 6 actually makes full use of at the front of the car. I mean, it's just worlds away from the IONIQ 5, and that was with us just 12 months ago. In fact, the next car, the IONIQ 7, well, that's going to be a very large SUV and will probably look nothing like the 6 and nothing like the 5. And that's something that Hyundai have been incredibly bold with. In fact, they're staying away from this kind of Russian doll effect. Mercedes EQS and EQE, for example. So yeah, so what we end up having is a brand that is bringing out very distinctive cars that just looks absolutely stunning, instantly recognizable, and I gotta be honest, I think extremely cool. Now, yes, they're not gonna be to everyone's taste. I mean, people will say it's gonna have the Marmite effect. But the problem with cars like this, or I should say the good thing about cars like this, is if you don't like Marmite, you don't look back at the jar. But if you look at this car and you're not too fussed with it or not a big fan of it, you will give it a second glance as you walk away. And that's something I absolutely love about it. It is hugely distinctive. It looks like a concept car, and it is just incredibly cool. I mean, we've got those pixel lights at the front. We've got 20-inch alloy wheels here, which actually don't look very aerodynamic. I mean, we've got no kind of carbon blade effects on them, which is a bit surprising. But all in all, what we have here is a car that looks really stunning, very sexy. It is a sedan, so think of this as kind of maybe a baby Porsche Taycan perhaps, because, well, that's a sedan that's selling very well as an EV. So even though in the UK we don't sell a huge amount of saloons and sedans, I think this could be a massive hit for the Korean brand. Definitely 2 out of 2 so far. But yeah, let me know what you think of the IONIQ 6's styling in the comment section below. But now let's have a little look at what they've done with the interior. Sat in the front of the IONIQ 6, you are greeted by a very comfortable interior, and it actually feels like an evolution of the IONIQ 5s, but I mean that in a good way. Now, because this is a saloon or sedan, it does mean it's a little bit lower to the ground than the IONIQ 5. Now, I do refuse to call that car a crossover or SUV. I just class it as a mega hatchback. So as a result, you do have to kind of bend down a little bit more to get yourself sat in the IONIQ 6. but once you're sat in these seats, you find that they are incredibly comfortable. They hold a big bear like me in place, and there is a huge amount of adjustment, including with the steering wheel, where we have got both rake and reach adjustment, so getting the perfect driving position is easy. Now next comes interior quality. Now of course, this being an EV and a next generation EV, it's packed full of sustainable materials, so it's definitely environmentally friendly in that sense. But in terms of what you're going to touch and kind of poke around whilst you're driving it, yes, we got soft touch plastics here on top of the dash. We have got kind of like a hard fabric slash fabric effect here on the center console, as well as some, well, feels a little bit hard here on top of the door, on top of the doors, but it could actually be the fact that this is a pre-production vehicle and those will turn into soft touch plastics for the full production vehicle. But it doesn't feel like it's lacking in quality in here, even though, as I've said, this is a pre-production car. Everything does feel really lovely, and you do get a nice feel-good factor knowing that all the materials, or most of the materials in here, are recycled and sustainable. So that is one kind of yeah, thumbs up you can definitely give when it comes to helping the environment. Next comes cubby spaces, which are actually pretty good here in the IONIQ 6. So we've got some very decent door pockets, and I love the fact that the plastic is see-through. Definitely gives a nice, quite funky effect to it. But you can get a medium-sized bottle of drink in there. And also, just like the IONIQ 5, we have got this kind of little area here, which, yes, it is a door handle, but you could perhaps put your mobile phone or a wallet, and it's not going to get lost anywhere. Now, on the center console, unlike the IONIQ 5, which has this kind of floating center console which moves, this is fixed and definitely gives the impression that you're in a kind of like an executive vehicle. You know, you want to be separated away from your passenger. So on here we have got some wireless charging, we've got a USB input, a couple of cup holders here which are nice and handy, and actually we've got a load of buttons here which operate the windows and also the auto hold and locking. So that's actually quite unique, and it does mean we get a kind of clean design to the doors here. Now just behind there we have got a center armrest where we have got two USB-C charging inputs, and there is like a little storage cubby area here where perhaps you could keep your key. So that is pretty handy. And then underneath we have got an extra storage area as well, and again we have got this see-through plastic, but it is actually quite funky, and I do love the fact that you could keep some items there and it's not going to roll around anywhere. Now, just like the IONIQ 5, we don't have a glove box, we have got a glove tray. So it does mean that you can put some items in there, and actually some relatively large items, and they're not going to get stuck, which is really cool. Now, one of the things that Hyundai have said about the IONIQ 6 is that they are happy for you to kind of, or they want you to work whilst you're in the car or whilst you're pulled over somewhere. So because we've got this kind of high up center console here, which separates the driver and the passenger, you can rest your laptop or something, so you can work in the car, perhaps whilst the car is charging, for example. Now, speaking of charging, on the steering wheel, just like the IONIQ 5, we got no Hyundai badge, but we have got these four little boxes or little pixels here. Now, unlike the IONIQ 5, these light up and they actually let you know how the charging is going on your car, which I think is really cool. So if you are kind of relaxing or working whilst the car's charging, you can easily see what the levels are. So that's a real handy feature, and definitely shows Hyundai are evolving their EVs to make them as user-friendly as possible, especially to the owner of the car, but also to those who perhaps want to walk by and just see what the charging level is on your IONIQ 6. So again, a very useful feature. Now, because this is a pre-production car, all of the menu systems and touchscreens and that are not fully integrated yet, but what I can tell you is that we still have the two 12.3-inch displays. One of them, of course, is your dashboard display. The other one is your infotainment system and is also a touchscreen. And we've also got two additional displays as well. Now, these are for your wing mirror cameras. And sat here just looking at them, the way that they're angled, they're in the perfect position. I mean, again, Hyundai have really thought about how these should be integrated into the car. Now, of course, some places in the world you can't have these wing mirror cameras, particularly like, for example, like the US, so they would be removed for those markets. But here in the UK and Europe, we can have them, and I do love the way, as I said, that they're integrated into the dashboard. In fact, they look like little winglets that you might see on the edge of an airplane's wing, or perhaps, you know, an American car from the 1950s where you got the fins at the back. It's just a really nice, elegant feature, and it does suit the car really well. It definitely does not feel like an afterthought that you have seen in the cars like the Audi e-tron, or perhaps even the Lexus ES or the revised ES, for example. But these are features that I really do like. And when it comes to the infotainment system as well, I do love the fact that we've got this kind of chrome surround. So again, it feels like an evolution of what we've seen on the IONIQ 5, where perhaps Hyundai have been listening to some of their customers with the 5, and perhaps they weren't quite happy with the way that these displays were kind of plonked onto the dashboard. But definitely with this new kind of chrome surround, it does feel more integrated into the dash, and does as well feel a bit more driver-centric at the same time. So yeah, in terms of the infotainment system, it's stuff we have seen before from the Hyundai group, so it's actually a very good infotainment system. But definitely these screens for the wing mirrors are a definite highlight. So really, to sum up the interior of the IONIQ 6, it is a very comfortable place to be. I do actually like this new center console. It does give a more executive feel to the car compared to the IONIQ 5, and it feels like a good evolution in terms of the IONIQ range. It is making me wonder what Hyundai are going to do with the IONIQ 7 when that gets released in the future. But you know what? I think that's enough of being sat here in the front of the IONIQ 6. Let's see what it's like in the back. Sat in the back of the IONIQ 6, you have got plenty of space back here. However, it is compromised because of that sloping roofline. Now, I've got that passenger seat actually set to my driving position, and I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide. And as you can see, I've got a stupid amount of knee room. However, headroom is a little bit tight. Now, I am 5'7" tall, and if I sit up straight, my head is rubbing against the top of the roof lining. So if you are a 6-footer, you're definitely going to feel a little bit claustrophobic back here. It is definitely suitable for adults, well, 2 adults back here, but you could get 3 kids back here. Now, speaking of kids, of course, we've got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and there are actually just little gaps here in the leather, so it should make it pretty easy to affix a child seat. Now, cubby spaces are actually pretty good back here as well. We got some decent sized door pockets where you can get a medium sized bottle of drink in there. We got this extra little pocket here, which is very handy. You could perhaps put your phone or maybe your wallet in there. And just like the front and also in the IONIQ 5, we have got this little area here where, again, you can put your phone or perhaps put something back there so you know it's not going to get lost. Now, we have got your aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats. We have got a couple of USB-C charging inputs and a little kind of storage area where you can put your mobile phone, so that is pretty handy. And then finally, of course, yes, we have got a center armrest which does come down, and we have got a couple of additional cup holders there, so that is really handy. Now, the windows are of a decent size. They are actually tinted as well, but they do allow a nice amount of light into the cabin. However, I don't know if they go all the way down yet, but you might just see a cutscene in a second. But all in all, it does feel nice and light and airy in here, but it's just not spacious because of that sloping roofline. But that's just something to be aware of here in the back of the IONIQ 6. Now I think it's time that we leave the back seats area and we go see what it's like in the boot. Now, it's at the back of the IONIQ 6 where things get really quite funky, especially when compared to the Prophecy concept. On that car, there was just a massive area just adorned with these pixel lights. But of course, this being the production car, yeah, things have got to be a little bit more managed and maintained. So the first thing that we see is that we got not 1, but 2 rear spoilers. And it does mean that the IONIQ 6 is a truly aerodynamic car. But it's not just the fact that we got spoilers here. I mean, they look just really elegant and purposeful. I mean, this top spoiler here actually has a load of pixelated lights on it as well. And when you get the brake lights turned on, it really does look stunning. And it's just a really pleasant aesthetic feature to see. We then have this little kind of, almost like a little ducktail spoiler here, like you might see on an older Porsche 911, for example. But again, it'll help smooth the air and just reduce the drag of the IONIQ 6. Then just below there, of course, this being an IONIQ, we still have pixelated lights going across the width of the boot area on the IONIQ. And again, it just stands out. It looks very distinctive. And just like some of the Audi EVs we're seeing now, it will do a little dance and a little feature to kind of, you know, show it started up for you. And then a little bit lower down, we have got this kind of, it looks a little bit like a diffuser, but of course this isn't a sporty sedan. This is actually like a nice, comfortable luxury well, family kind of saloon. But what we have here is actually a really nice dynamic rear end. Again, we've got the pixel lights here for the fog lights and the indicators. We have got a little bit of satin trim here as well, something that we've seen on the IONIQ 5, depending on what color you go for. So that does stand out on this particular car. Now, something we can do on this car, and remember, this is a pre-production car as well, is we can open the boot. So just like the Porsche Taycan, this is a sedan or a saloon, so the boot opens up nice and high. We have got a nice square load area. Yes, it's not as practical as a hatchback, but that actually looks pretty impressive, and you could easily get a few suitcases in there, or definitely a few weekend bags. So that's really handy. Now we have got a couple of little handles here as well, so you can get the rear seats down if you want to load any longer items into or through the boot area. Now the one thing I can't see in here is a 12-volt socket or any tethering hooks. However, because this is a pre-production car, they might not have been fitted just yet. And then we have got a little bit of space underneath the boot area where you can perhaps put your charging cables, or you can use the frunk, which a lot of people are doing with their IONIQ 5. But yeah, I mean, at the back of this IONIQ 6 is actually a really stylish, very distinctive part of the car. I mean, the first kind of 2/3 of the car are very curvaceous, very stylish, but quite minimal in the way it's been styled. It's actually really simple. But here at the back, yes, there is a little bit going on, but it does look bloody lovely.